Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Winchester City Council's Planning Committee, taking place in the Walton Suite of the Winchester Guildhall. It's Wednesday, the 12th of March, 2025, and the time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter, and I am the Chair of the Planning Committee. Around the table, we have the other elected members of the committee, and we are supported today by a number of officers. Lorna Hutchings, the service lead for the built environment, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, the case officers, the first one is Megan Osborne, who will sit over there and change with each item, and Matthew Watson from Democratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. I need to remind you all to ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off entirely. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please make sure you look at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in and during the breaks for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Can I welcome members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. Finally, I'd like to express thanks from the committee to Rob Green, who is one of our key team leaders and planning officers. It's his last planning committee today. He's leaving us after 9 years of faithful service to the City Council. And on behalf of the planning committee and all the members of the planning team, and indeed all the members of Winchester City Council, I'd like to thank you, Rob, for your years of service to our community and wish you every success as you move on to working for the South Downs National Park, I believe. That sounds like an exciting move, and we wish you all the best with that. Thank you very much for your time with us. We will miss you terribly. Turning now to your agendas. First of all, members, shall we accept the update sheet onto the agenda? Is that agreed? Thank you. Apologies and deputy members, Matthew.
Good morning, Chair, members. Councillor Cunningham has sent his apologies and has been replaced by Councillor Godfrey. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And members, do we have any disclosures of interest, please? Councillor Small.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item number 8. I know the applicant and good friends of the family members, so I'll leave the room for that one, just to be clear. And agenda item number 9, I am ward councillor for that application, but I haven't discussed it with anybody and have no predetermined ideas.
Councillor Ashford.
Yeah, item 9, I'm also the ward councillor. I haven't spoken to anyone, so intend to stay in the meeting.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I need to declare that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in respect of the items on today's agenda due to my additional role as a Hampshire County Councillor. However, as there is no material conflict of interest regarding these items, I have a dispensation granted by the Audit and Governance Committee that enables me to speak and vote on these matters. Additionally, on item 8 in the agenda, I am the ward councillor and also a parish councillor for the area, but I've had no discussions or involvement in any of the parish objections or from the applicant or any objectors.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Any more expressions, disclosures of interest? No. Okay, thank you. And the minutes of the previous meeting, which are on your agenda pack, pages 9 to 20, are those agreed as an accurate record of the meeting, please? Is that agreed? Thank you. We've accepted the update sheet. So now we move to the planning applications. And the first application before us today is our agenda item 6, land at Silkstead Farm, Poles Lane in Hursley. And our presenting officer is Megan Osborne. So over to you, Megan.
Thank you. I'd like to first draw your attention to the update sheet. There's some additions it was not put into the report, the comments from the Hursley Parish Council, so that has now been put in the update sheet for you to read. Changes to condition, a few of the wordings of condition 3, 4, 9 and 25, and they've been put in bold, so it's changes to the numbers of years for the battery storage and a number of years for the planting of trees, and a small change to the biodiversity net gain condition. The site is on agricultural land to the north of Poles Lane. There's a public right of way, the red line to the top of the screen, running to the north of the site, which is approximately 285 metres away. The north of the site bounds a large area of trees. And to the east, there is a small hedge. I'll show you some photos in a minute. And you can see Silkstead to the east, further on to the east, which has got some listed buildings within it. Bunstead is to the west, with a buffer of trees along that western boundary. To the south is Poles Lane, and this hatched area is ancient woodland. So the site, the red line, doesn't enter into the ancient woodland land. It goes around that area there. Just an aerial photo showing the site again. So you can see the green buffer area to the north of the site. Footpath runs along here. So views from the footpath would be, you wouldn't see the proposal. I'll show you the proposal in a minute. And there's a slight buffer along here, which the applicant is proposing to beef up. And I'll show you the landscape plan. This is Silkstead to the east, and then to the west is Bunstead here, and then Poles Lane. This is the red line of the site. Again, all the areas I've shown you. The proposal is for a 50 megawatt battery storage system. This includes 35 battery containers to the north of the site here, an attenuation basin and drainage that runs along the site to an existing ditch that runs along Poles Lane to the south here. It also includes a new access from Poles Lane and a access gate onto Poles Lane there. The plans have been amended slightly in light of fire regulations, in that they wanted to put gravel around the existing storage, the proposed storage, have a buffer of 10 metres from the side of the site, and then put a new emergency access to the site as well. That has been amended. The other amendment was to the gate, which is here on the site, the new gate. We wanted it to look a bit more rural, so we've changed the design of that, and this is the design here. This is the landscaping plan, so you can see the additional planting around here, and then along the area on Poles Lane, and then to the east of the site, this dotted area is additional planting to beef up that boundary along there. So that's woodland planting. So this dark green area is woodland planting, and this is wild seed. Oh, yeah. Right, this is the elevation of the proposed battery storage containers. It's 2.8 metres high from the container is 2.8 metres high, and the base is 1 metre high. So it's a total of 3.8 metres. Let's take you through some photos. So this is a photo looking towards Poles Lane is here. And then this is the western boundary looking towards Binstead. This is the western boundary again. So you can see it's a quite dense tree belt there. This is looking east towards Silkstead, and this is the area that they're proposing additional planting, woodland planting along that boundary. This is the boundary with Poles Lane. And this is the dense tree belt along the northern section of the site. And this is the eastern boundary again, looking towards Silkstead. So this is the one they're proposing to add some more planting to. And again, this is Poles Lane. So the new access point would be approximately along here. This is just to show you the point of connection and the proposed site. So it's approximately 2.2 kilometres away from the point of connection. And this is the point of connection and the proposed site, you can see here. So it has to be within a 3 kilometre radius of the point of connection. In conclusion, the NPPF is generally in support of the principle of this type of renewable energy proposal. And although the City Council doesn't have direct planning policy for this sort of application, there is a policy in the Emerging Plan Policy CN7, which supports battery storage. The site is on moderate agricultural quality land, is well screened and located away from nearby residential amenities. Therefore, it's considered that the proposal is acceptable due to the wider public benefits on carbon reduction and the net zero targets. It is recommended for approval, subject to conditions as set out in my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now we move to our public speakers. And our first speaker is Martin Eyre. Martin, if you'd like to come forward, please. And when you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good morning. Government guidance on best locations is very limited, but states importantly that local authorities must take into account the views of the local community. Over 30 objections have been raised to this proposal from just about every property in this vicinity. And all 3 local parish councils have also objected. Expert guidance is to locate BESS units adjacent to the substations where they connect. This site is 2.5 kilometres away as the crow flies from the connection point. How does that make sense? There is already an existing BESS unit adjacent to the Port Lane substation that could be expanded rather than develop a new site on this distant greenfield site on agricultural land in a rural hamlet. The applicant has provided no information at all on how they connect to the substation, the cable routing, which will be over 3 kilometres, or the infrastructure involved. The information must be an integral part of any planning consideration. They don't have access over the intervening land to be able to go direct. Conveniently, there's no mention of the recent discovered Roman road or Roman villa settlement on the adjoining land. Both of these aspects need further investigation. Because this has a green tag, the report bypasses good planning principles. By any consideration, this is a very large industrial noisy complex in the heart of Bunstead and Silkstead. The complex has over 70 lights and generates a lot of noise. Noise and light carry very far in a rural setting. Houses in close proximity, just 200 metres away, not 375 metres as the report falsely claims, will be significantly impacted. The houses are closer than the width of this proposed site. The key question is, Do you want to preside over the complete industrialisation of the gap between Hursley and Otterbourne? Veolia, the ever-increasing Fordell Farm, and the recently approved IncuHive are significant. Approving this site would set a very negative precedent for further industrial creep on industrial land along Poles Lane towards Hursley. In summary, this is a large, noisy complex on industrial land in the heart of a rural community. No information on the routing or infrastructure is provided.
I'm afraid your time is up. I'm sorry,
Okay.
but thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your contribution. Don't, please, if you could just wait a minute, members may have questions of clarification. Do members have questions of clarification? In fact, we don't, so thank you very much indeed. If you could switch off the mic, thank you. We now have the Parish Council representative, I think from Hursley Parish Council, David Killeen. Good morning, Councillor Killeen.
Good morning.
You have up to 3 minutes. When
Good
you
morning, councillors and officers. We object, along with many other residents and parish councils, to this application for the following reasons. And although we recognise the need for energy not to be wasted nationally, this facility is simply in the wrong place. We also strongly wish to point out that all public and council representations are objecting to this location, but the planning officers are proposing acceptance. So there is something strange with this situation. And this is why we ask that this be considered by committee. This proposal does not meet the NPPF or Winchester policies, as we understand. Planning policies should contribute to and enhance the natural and local environment by recognising the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside, including the economic and other benefits of the best agricultural land, trees and woodland. This site is in a green field with countryside on all sides and in agricultural use grade 3. The need to connect to the substation on Port Lane has not been demonstrated, and alternative brown or greenfield sites have not been fully explored. Any change of use from greenfield to industrial will set a precedent along Poles Lane and encourage further unauthorised expansion, as has already happened at Fordell's Farm. Policy DM10 states that in the countryside, the development of essential facilities and services to serve local communities may exceptionally be permitted where they comply with the development plan. This policy has clearly not been addressed, and why is it essential at this location? Policy DM19 limits light pollution in the countryside, and this has not been fully considered. Policy DM23 limits the impact on the character of the rural gap between Hursley and Otterbourne, and this has not been addressed. The site is a significant low-lying area subject to regular flooding from ground and water table flooding, and a flood risk assessment states the risk of groundwater flooding is high for the entire site, which would cause pollution into the main water course, which runs from Hursley to Otterbourne into the water processing plant. The proposed fire water drainage pond is of insufficient capacity, and there is no explanation of how any polluted water, as would be inevitable, would be disposed of, other than going into the drain, which then goes into our taps. This would require significant research and investment by Hampshire Highways and Southern Water. It should also be noted that this is a speculative private enterprise and apparently not driven or commented on by SSEN or the National Grid. The site is also considered to be too distant, as Martin said, from the Port Lane link to the grid. There is no information about how any link to the grid is proposed, and distances of 3 to 3.5 kilometres are mentioned. So in summary, it's a good idea nationally, but not just at the location, and the case is not proven. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Killeen. Any questions of clarification, members? No, you were very clear. Thank you very much indeed. Now we have the ward councillor, Councillor Jan Warwick. Good morning, Councillor Warwick.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members.
You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I represent local residents who have serious concerns about the proposed battery storage system in this location. Government guidance on battery storage locations is very limited at the moment, but what is clear is that local authorities must consider the views of the local community. We have over 20 formal objections from a relatively low density population in this location, but nearly every property in the vicinity objected, as well as the 3 adjacent parish councils. Battery storage facilities are typically sited adjacent to substations to minimise the impact on residents. This proposal, as you've heard, is 2.5 kilometres away from the nearest substation, and there's no clear information on how the facility will connect to that substation and the routing of the 2.5 to 3 kilometre cable. This is not a small, low-impact agricultural facility. It is an industrial complex proposed at the heart of rural Bunstead and Siltstead, with 24/7 lighting, a significant noise output, and the impact will be substantial, especially at night in a dark skies rural setting. Some homes are just 200 metres from the site, and this means that the impact on residents will be direct and it will be continuous. Committee members, approving this application would set a dangerous precedent for further industrial creep along Poles Lane and towards Hursley, permanently altering the historic rural character of this area. The site is in a rural setting, occupying a productive agricultural field. The removal of the 9.5 metre mature hedgerow, I think that's already been taken down, to facilitate access to the site will further damage the landscape and visual amenity. I drove past it yesterday. There's a blooming great gap where the hedge was. The noise assessment provided by the applicant admits that predicted nighttime noise levels will exceed background levels at all nearby locations. Nearby residents may need to keep their bedroom windows shut permanently. In my opinion, this application is contrary to our policies, MTRA 4, development in the countryside, stating the development in rural areas should only be permitted if an operational need for a countryside location, such as agriculture or forestry. This proposal does not meet that requirement. DM23, the rural character, requires development to avoid unacceptable impact on rural character, visual intrusion and tranquility. This proposal fails on all 3 tests. DM24, special trees, hedgerows, requires the protection of ancient woodlands. Our own tree officers raised a serious concern about the impact of this development with a facility just 15 metres away from ancient trees. Even if one ancient tree is lost, it would further undermine the project's sustainability claims. And of course, the NPPF, this proposal does the opposite of the brownfield proposal over greenfield sites by destroying a productive agricultural green field. In addition, the facility has uniquely industrial appearance, unlike any agricultural building, with 6 metre high CCTV masts, 2.5 security fencing and equipment 3.8 metres in height. It will certainly stand out in a rural setting. The site is prone to flooding with high groundwater levels in Hursley, flowing along Poles Lane towards Otterbourne. Poles Lane floods regularly throughout the winter months when the roadside drainage ditches are at full capacity. The landscape plan is underwhelming, missing the opportunity to enhance biodiversity and integrate the facility into the environment. So I urge the committee to reject this application. However, should you be minded to approve, then can I request the following conditions: that we guarantee protection of the ancient woodland in this location, as highlighted by our own tree officer, and relocate or reduce the size of the installation. That we have a very clear commitment to follow up the habitat management and monitoring plan to ensure biodiversity net gain on this site. That no construction work is permitted on Sundays and bank holidays, and that regular mud clearance is organised along Poles Lane, which is a busy national speed limit route, during the construction works. Chairman, residents of Bunstead and Siltstead are disappointed by the industrial intrusion into this rural community. I appreciate that farming is particularly challenging at the moment, but we are all custodians of the future, and we value the role of the Planning Committee to uphold our planning policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sticking to your 5 minutes. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the councillor? Councillor Laming?
Yes, as a matter of interest, how does this site compare then to the one on Port Lane? Because that's much closer to the substation, but it's also close to Oliver's Battery.
It's not it's not as close to residential properties. So that would be the major issue. The also is that we've got a right of way that is very close. So that's a well-walked path. It's the Monarch's Way, which is a historic right of way, runs just to the north of this site, a mere 240 metres away. So that is the difference. Thank you, Councillor Lemming.
No others? Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Warwick. You may return to your seat. And finally, we have two supporters of the scheme, Kevin Parr and Richard Biffin. If you gentlemen would like to come forward, thank you. You have 3 minutes between you. Have you decided how you're going to speak? And you are Mr. Lovely. Thank you very much, Mr. Parr. When you're ready, you have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Chair, thank you for the opportunity to address the Planning Committee in support of the proposed temporary battery energy storage facility. We've worked very closely with your technical officers on all aspects, including highways, environmental health, landscape ecology, to address all the statutory consultation responses, the concerns of the local public, and there are no objections from statutory consultees or from officers with regard to the proposed development, subject to appropriate conditions. We have worked closely with the lead local authority and Hampshire Drainage Office to design an acceptable surface water drainage and design scheme via the proposed outfall that is acceptable to both parties to the agreed development. The applicant also engaged with Hampshire Isle of Wight Fire Service right from the outset of the development and worked closely to design fire safety details that will deal with the proposed development. The fire service has no objection, and as part of those discussions we agreed and installed an additional emergency access, and the conditions set out in condition number 12 addresses the detail with regard to the management safety plan. An agricultural land classification report has been completed and submitted. The report identifies that the land is grade 3B and therefore not best and most versatile land. The total agricultural farming unit extends to over 1,000 acres, and the temporary loss is fully reversible at the end of the temporary period when there's a detailed restoration scheme required by planning condition. Renewable energy projects can only be connected to the grid system where capacity is available. The proposed development will connect to Port Lane substation to the north of the planning application site, and a firm, secured point of contract connection is agreed with Scottish and Southern Electric for the project. This battery storage energy facility is an important contribution to the UK's net zero carbon efforts in Hampshire and significantly contributes to Winchester City Council's climate exchange goals. As your officers report, there is going to be a significant growing need for the facilities like this to deal with the change and the transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy development. Battery energy storage plays a significant role in balancing the grid to enable this to happen. Proposed development assists in enabling a faster transition away to renewable energy. In conclusion, all necessary technical and environmental assessments undertaken and submitted as part of the planning application have been robustly assessed by the Council's officers and statutory consultees and are acceptable. Furthermore, the proposed development is consistent with the existing planning policy at national and local level. The relevant planning policy and other considerations have been considered in detail. We welcome and support the planning officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sticking to your 3 minutes. Members, do we have questions of clarification for the applicant? Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. Considering the number of objections we've had from members of the public and the parish council, have you had any connection with the parish councils or members of the public, like public exhibition or anything?
We didn't undertake a public exhibition, no, not as part of this development.
And have you been to visit the parish councils and explain the case?
No, we haven't been to any parish council.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Small.
Thank you. You might have preempted this one. How are you planning to connect to the grid?
Right, we have a grid connection offer from Scottish and Southern, as I said, that's connecting into the substation to the north of the site. We will be looking to take our cable connection down the public highway and connect directly to the substation. We'll do it as a section 50 local highways connection. Just to clarify, the reason that the site is where it is that we have spoken to other landowners in the locality, and there's been mention of the battery energy storage facility that exists to the west of the existing substation. We spoke to landowners and we were unable to secure any connection at all due to alternative development requirements. We were given no cable access at all across land, and we were not offered potential to have a development in the locality. We spoke to other landowners and we are now in a position whereby we've made our planning application and we've assessed in detail our scheme, and the location that's come forward is deliverable and will utilise the public highway and verge, and will unfortunately not be able to go direct across third-party land because we were unable to secure and given access. I hope that clarifies why we're where we are.
Thank you very much. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Could you explain the best process? Where's the electricity come from to charge the batteries, and what's the call on the energy?
Absolutely. The battery energy storage system acts as a storage facility to enable the grid system to be balanced. So the batteries will import power during low demand periods, store that power, and then will discharge during high demand requirements in order to balance the grid. There's currently a resilience, I don't know if people are aware, there's a resilience within the grid of less than 5%. And as we move from a transition to fossil fuel, gas and oil related power, we need to ensure that during periods when the sun doesn't shine, because it doesn't shine all the time, and the wind doesn't blow, and we have renewable energy, there must be a balancing system within that power supply. Because if you had a major demand and there was no sun and no wind or renewable energy, it's exactly what we want to move towards that system, but there has to be a balance in it to enable you to have a 24-hour full-time supply. So the batteries import during low periods of demand and are available to export during peak demand to ensure there's a balance within the ongoing supply and we don't have brownouts and blackouts associated with power supply.
Thank you. If I'm right, that's there's loss in that network you referred to will be exacerbated by distance, and so when you download the energy into your batteries over what would be 4 or 5 kilometers of wire, you're going to lose 5% of the energy, and 5% will be lost on the way back. That seems very inefficient. Isn't it better to have the best close to the network?
Absolutely. As I explained, we sought to have the facility closer to the point of connection, but there was no available land that was made available to us. We have a grid connection, we have a firm grid connection, and the land that we've identified is suitable in terms of development. We would like it closer, but there is no available land.
Thank you. Councillor Clear, I think next.
Thank you, Chair. May I ask who monitors and manages the battery health, safety and performance, and safety checks, ensuring proper grounding, ventilation and fire safety measures? Thank you.
The installation will be completed, but prior to any development being undertaken, there will be a detailed fire safety management plan as required by condition 12 proposed to be attached to the planning consent, which requires full consultation with the fire service to agree a detailed plan which will then be implemented. It has to be agreed before the development can commence, so all those details are set out, and then it will be monitored and operated by the developer, working closely with the fire service. So the fire service will monitor that detail.
So who actually does, if you like, regular checks to make sure everything's healthy, safety, and the performance is up to standard?
It's a full telemetric system, so it's continually monitored 24 hours a day, every day during its operation. So each individual battery cell unit is monitored. It has a health measurement as it's going through. They can be individually closed down as battery units, or they can be run as a full system, and that management will be as part of the detailed scheme that has been agreed with the fire service. So it will be in conjunction with the fire service, but it's a continual 7-day-a-week monitoring system that is part of the operation.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you. Following on from that part of the conversation, lighting. Why do you need lighting when you're fully monitoring it from a remote part? This is a dark night, dark skies area.
Absolutely. I mean, the lighting system is, again, the detail of it is set out in the condition, which will be agreed prior to any installation of the lighting. The lighting will be motion linked. It will be down lighted, and it will only be there in terms of emergency use. There's no need for it to be on at night at all. So it will only be triggered by motion. It will only be there as an emergency, and it's for a safety access to the site. So it will come on as anyone goes to the site in order to carry out some works, for example, but it will not be on 24/7.
Okay. Noise.
Yes.
That is something which is quite relevant to the people that live around that area.
Yes.
So what are you expecting?
We've done a detailed noise assessment. We submitted that with the planning application. There was some comments made by the environmental health officer, and we submitted a further detail to demonstrate that there would be no material impact on the adjoining properties from the operation of the site, and the environmental health officer was satisfied that the operation will not have an adverse impact.
So what are you doing to suppress it?
The battery units are within fully contained containers. They are fully involved in the containers, and the MVPS units, which deal with the management of the battery systems, are contained within self-contained secure units, which have their own noise limitation. And the specification of the development will ensure, as set out in the noise assessment, that we will not be in contradiction.
Yeah, because the other worry is that you're in an area which is very sensitive to the aqueducts.
Sorry?
You're in an area which is very sensitive to the aqueducts for the main water supply.
Yes.
A large part of Hampshire. So
Absolutely.
therefore you've got a problem if you do have a fire, that lithium is quite a dangerous substance to get into the course, and you would then affect it permanently. And that's something that we need to be assured is going to be really fully.
So, Laming, are you asking a question or making a statement?
I'm asking a question. This is quite an important question. If you don't
It is an
mind, Chair.
important question. Can you ask the question?
I am.
Thank you.
So how are you going to ensure that if there is a fire, that all the water that's used in there is contained?
Right. We engaged with Hampshire Isle of Wight Fire Service right at the beginning of this process. We spoke to their specialist officers and have designed a scheme that meets their requirement, and the detail of that scheme will be set out in the subsequent requirements under condition 12. The system will be fully lined underneath the batteries. So the batteries will sit within a contained pad, which is fully reversible and will be removed, and the site will be restored in accordance with the relevant conditions at the end of the temporary period. But that system will then feed to a attenuation basin, which is shown on the drawings. In fact, there just to the south, and that attenuation basin has been sized to ensure that it can receive all of the water in a standard, well, an emergency fire process. And at the end of that attenuation basin, there is what's called a penstock valve. So if there is an emergency, and there's only ever been one major fire in the UK, in Liverpool, with a different technology, and the technology and the design has moved significantly forward, and this proposal is not the same technology as what was used with that facility, but the penstock will shut off, and then it will then contain that contaminated water within the holding system. And at the end of any emergency fire event, that water will then be removed off site. It won't be released. It will be tankered and removed off site and dealt with independently.
Thank you very much. You happy, Councillor Laming? Lovely. Any more questions of clarification? Sorry, Councillor Langford, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The entire premise of this project is to contribute to net zero.
Yes.
So have you actually done a business case which shows the end-to-end life cycle analysis of the entire project in terms of cost versus benefits? So, for example, the carbon footprint of the project versus the contribution of leaving it as it is as a green field. So I'm talking about the carbon footprint of things like the road infrastructure, production for the concrete bases for the batteries to sit on, production of the fencing, the batteries themselves, mining of the copper, the lithium and the minerals, and the transport footprint of getting materials on site, including importation. So a full end-to-end life cycle analysis to provide evidence that this is contributing to net zero.
We have not undertaken a full lifetime analysis, but what is clear is that batteries have a strategic role to play in the transition away from fossil fuel to renewable energy, because they are the balance within that system to enable us to move from fossil fuel derived energy to a strategic renewable energy derived power supply. But we've not done an absolute full detailed root and branch analysis of that, but the development is coming forward in terms of meeting a need to enable us to move towards a renewable energy driven system. So that is actually the driver and the balance that allows us to transition across from fossil fuel to renewable energy. But we haven't done a full detailed life cycle analysis.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Langford-Smith. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. You may return to your seats now. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you. If you could switch the microphone off as you go. Thank you. Right, that's the end of our public speaking. Megan, is there anything you wanted to add following that before we come to questions on the report?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, members. So questions on the whole report. Councillor White.
So it's quite light on detail regarding the cabling and the connection to the substation. We had a little bit more detail from the supporters. It mentions in the report about the biodiversity effect on the actual site, but I just wondered what the impact of the sort of cabling works, given that it's 2.2 kilometres of cabling, and whether that's something we should be considering in terms of biodiversity and environmental damage.
We're just considering the application that's in front of us for the battery storage and not the proposed cabling. It's the battery storage is within the red line, so that's what we're assessing this proposal.
But I understand that it's going along the road anyway, so they're digging up tarmac. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I couldn't find anywhere in the report or the application an explanation as to why what the justification for this development in the countryside is. What is the operational need that is met by this application which obviously isn't required for this type of development in the countryside.
Firstly, there's a need by central government to meet certain requirements on renewable energy, and there's been certain targets set by the government to meet a reduction in gas emissions into the environment. The applicant did so the point of connection is actually on the site is 3 kilometres away. Is under 3 kilometres away, sorry. They looked at previously developed land within that 3 kilometres radius and went through this within their report. Those sites were unavailable and did not fit the criteria needed for this particular application. Then they looked at areas within the countryside outside the development boundary, and they again were not suitable. So they finally looked at this site and considered it to be acceptable in relation to the countryside impact to the surrounding area. It's well screened from the footpath to the north and sufficient distance away from neighbouring amenities.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the operational need to be in the countryside. The fact that there is no land available they have access to is not an operational need. I want to build a nice big house. I don't own land where I want to build it, but I'll put it in the middle of a field. Doesn't get permission. They don't own land which would be more suitable. What is the operational need to build in the countryside?
Chair, if I may add, it's not as simple as that. It is not what in our pages 28, 29, 30 and 31 do set out in detail how they've gone through a site selection process. Fundamentally, they've got a you can see the map there, the radius that they have to look within, and they've looked at a very extensive number of bullet points which are setting out the different criteria. So I think it is pretty well set out in the report there, Chair. If you've got some specific questions about those elements on those pages, then we can help a little bit further maybe.
If I may, Madam Chairman, there are 28,000 plus hectares within that area. This is a site of 1 hectare. Where is the information specifying which sites have been rejected? Not just which sites are not available, but why
we don't normally expect that sort of detail, I'm afraid. If you've got a specific question about a specific point in the report that does justify the positioning of this in the countryside, in the report, could you ask that question otherwise?
I'm afraid that
if you could just save it for debate.
I'm trying to ask a question to say I can find no justification for building in the countryside in the report.
Well,
what is it?
That you've made that point. The officers have answered it. If you'd like to save that for debate, that would be fine.
If I just add one more point, Chair, page 29, the bullet pointed list, that is your list of reasons why operationally it should be accepted in the countryside. And then you take a balanced approach, you know, in terms of looking at the opportunities there might be. Would there seriously be something available in the settlement? And you've got the point of connection radius to go through. So it's a site selection process. It really is set out very clearly, those reasons. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lorna. Councillor White.
So concerns have been raised about drainage on the site, and I note that also concerns about the ancient woodland. So we have condition 6 that has some restrictions about how the drainage swale is going to be built in terms of hand digging techniques and things like that. But doesn't there need to be some checks and balances regarding the future of that ancient woodland, given that it's not a woodland that you can just replace or change because it's an ancient woodland? I just wonder whether there's more sort of long-term reviewing that might be needed in terms of the effect of that water draining into the ancient woodland.
Policies 19 to 26 set out the tree conditions, and it's 26, the policy that covers the no dug area within the ancient woodland 15-metre buffer. The other conditions set out that an agriculture should be present during that dig, and we will ask for information for future maintenance of those sites within our conditions that we've set out in the report. There's also 2 drainage conditions which have been asked for and advised for by the Lead Flood Authority, condition 10 and 11, I believe, which sets out that further information that we require.
Could I ask about the some reference was made to a recent discovery of a Roman villa and road in the area. Does that have any implications for this application, please?
We received no objections from the the archaeologist.
And I have another question that one of the councillors, I think Councillor Warwick, described the landscaping plans as underwhelming. Are you confident that what is proposed will provide sufficient screening for this development?
Yes, I am confident. The eastern boundary was the one that had the least amount of vegetation on, and they are putting and adding more vegetation along there, as you can see in this plan here. So all that dotted area, that is going to be planted up with new woodland to increase that boundary and along the top here.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. One of the interesting points is all the parishes are concerned about the construction traffic, because this is going to create heavy lorries using Otterbourne, Coles Lane, Rumsey Road, etc. Is there going to be a strict management plan where only a certain number of trucks can be using it a day? Because if they're coming in from the M3, that is on them, they're going to bring them down the main diversion route where it gets extremely congested, even without the motorway being on diversion.
And this will be covered by the construction management plan, which is conditioned as well, and details of that will be submitted and addressed, and we will consult the Hampshire Highways Department on that as well.
Because there's quite a lot of concern locally on those points, and that needs to be really tightly controlled.
It will cover the construction traffic and the mud on the roads, as mentioned before, as well.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. Mr. Ems, the objector, raised a point about government requirements for community engagement. Is there a requirement for community support in these type of schemes?
Any pre-application that we may receive as a material consideration, but in itself and in and of itself, it is an important aspect to consider, which has been set out in the national guidance, along with every single other aspect as well. So you can put that into the many balances. There's no specific requirement in policy to have to do that, but obviously we do encourage good proactive engagement, and I would imagine from moving forward the developers may wish to do that.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. On the question of noise, the report is quite clear. I'm familiar with these low-level noise monitoring. Should this be specified as to what is the maximum noise that is to be expected from the site at the nearest receptor? A figure of 45 decibels at the nearest window, bedroom window, would seem to be my expectation. But is that something which is enforceable?
Can we ask about noise and how it's been assessed?
I mean, it's been assessed by the Environmental Protection Officer, and further information was required by them in relation to neighbouring amenities. The nearest one being in Bunstead, I believe, to the east of the site. And there was no objection raised to the noise report submitted to us.
Presumably, members of the public could raise it if it became an issue, and therefore further mitigation could be required by our environmental officers. Is that?
We could add a condition regarding the noise report and asking them to comply with the noise report that's been submitted and approved by the Environmental Protection Officer
for the life of the
the
installation. Can we add a condition about that?
We can, but I'm not sure what the detail of the condition would be, because the fact they haven't recommended a condition in the first place, which they do often, to my mind, that indicates that there was no real need to do that. And so it wasn't necessary. If we were to add a condition, it would have to be delegated back to us, because I'm not sure that the contents of that, if it is specifying like a maximum decibel level or what it's actually specifying, but does have it mitigating measures within it. So if it has mitigating measures within it, then we can say that those measures have to be then carried out. So that's it.
I think it's sometimes the case that these sorts of installations, the noise levels increase with time and age of the installation. So maybe that would cover that then, if we can condition it, if it became an issue in due course.
Megan's just outlined there is monitoring within it as well, and of course we do have statutory nuisance, which our environmental protection team will be able to look at this as well, with a lot of other regulatory mechanisms should noise get such an issue that planning can't deal with in an amenity way.
Well, perhaps we could draft an extra condition that would cover that. That would be great. Councillor Godfrey?
If I may, just to add, the noise report is very positive and indicates that no noise above 30 decibels over a 15 second period, or whatever it is, the measurement period, is expected. And therefore, at a distance of the nearest bedroom window, even when open, there should be no noise. And that's what we need to say is expected. And if there were to be noise, which was then measurable by as a complaint, that would be the basis, even though it was only 47 decibels at that time, which in itself would not be normally a environmental issue. Would be cause for concern, and we want, if we can have that in the condition, that'd be.
I agree that people should be able to sleep with their bedroom windows open at night without hearing anything from this installation. So I think if we can draft a condition so that it just so that it requires mitigation, if anything, if it does get above any sort of.
It would also be covered by the Environmental Protection Act.
Yes.
So if any noise disturbance was reported, then that would be covered by them.
Yes, but I'd like to have a condition that meant that it was easy for people to get mitigation if necessary. Right. Any more questions on the report, members? I don't think I've got any more questions. No. So if I could just remind members, if you are considering voting against the officer recommendation, I would like you to, in debate, explain your material planning reasons and planning links to our plan for your reasons for refusal, if that's the way you're going. So we now move to debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. These applications are incredibly complex and can be quite controversial. So I think it's quite good that in sort of questioning of the applicants and officer that we've been able to sort of tease out some more detail. Although there is the sort of lack of specific policy in our current local plan, we are able to refer to the MPPF and our emerging local plan in regards to CM7. NTOA 4, as Councillor Guthrie says, does state that there is an operational need for a countryside location which in this particular application would need grid connections, which aren't usually available as much in towns or city centres. So I'm content that that meets that operational need. Furthermore, the land is of grade 3B agricultural. If there were 3A, I would be minded to consider objecting to this application, but it is 3B and is for an operational need of 30 years, so could be reverted after that period. There are concerns I know have been raised around fire safety. We as a committee aren't the experts on fire safety. We have to follow our statutory advice from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire Service, and that's secured in condition 12. Councillor Warwick raised concerns over the biodiversity net gain. I'm encouraged that this is secured on site in conditions 8 and 9 as well. And I understand the carbon impacts that were raised by Councillor Langford-Smith in regards to these schemes, especially when you look at them individually. However, and it can be quite alarming just looking at the scheme on its own, but these schemes are important to balance the fluctuations in the future in regards to solar and wind, and indeed currently, even with fossil fuel demand. For instance, if there's a popular TV show on and there's an advert break, people rush to put the kettle on. That puts a spike on the demand for the energy infrastructure, and we do need that balancing capacity there, which the battery storage would also provide. So I'm minded to support this application. I again understand that it's complex and can be quite controversial, but I do think this is needed, and the fact that it is in the countryside and there is M2A4, I'm quite satisfied that there is an operational need for it to be in this countryside location. Once again, towns and cities, those grid connections just aren't as available, and the impacts in regards to noise and others is much more significant there.
Thank you. Councillor White.
So I agree with Councillor Williams in terms of the operational need for this to be in this location. We've heard the very restrictive criteria of where these battery projects can be, and how it has to be grid led. So there are very few sites where they can actually get the connection to the grid. I think the need for energy resilience and the contribution that this project will make to carbon reduction basically outweighs the material harm that might be to the location and the neighbouring amenity. Also considering that this is a temporary project, and I appreciate the amended plans that answer many of the original concerns and the extra condition regarding the noise mitigation for the future.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you. This does raise quite a number of questions in my mind. There is a need for battery storage. I accept that, but is this the right location? I think that's something that we need to think about. Also, the fact that MTRA4, I'm not sure that it does comply with that. This is built quite close to the communities where we're seeing creep into the countryside around Poles Lane in various directions. I'm concerned with the noise. I'm concerned with the effect it could have on the watercourses. I'm really concerned that no community engagement have been entered into on this particular project from what I can see, and there's no immediate benefit to the local community itself. So I'm debating that, and I shall listen to what everybody else has to say.
Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you. The site is planned for 30 years and then reverts supposedly back to countryside, but it will take at least 20 years for the planting to mature. So I believe that that will have an impact on local amenity. There is significant local objection. We have a duty to take into consideration the support or lack of local people. I'm concerned about the noise and light in the countryside, which will not only impact on tranquility, but also impact on wildlife. I'm also concerned about the proximity to the ancient woodland and the groundwater flooding, and the fact that it's located near a public right of way. And we do have a duty to consider the setting of public rights of way. And my biggest concern is the fact that we have got no evidence before us that this is actually a green project. There is no cost benefit analysis that has been shown to us. And even if you look at the project in the round, we have not been shown that it is contributing to net zero because of the carbon footprint of the project itself. So I'm afraid I will not be supporting this application.
Any more contributions? Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Councillor Warwick identified a key problem in that this represents industrial creep into what is agricultural land. It has clearly been used for crop production, and I think we do need to be very much more careful of the loss of this land for 50, 60 years minimum that is being proposed. Although the criterion report suggests that a countryside location is appropriate, it doesn't give a justification. There's no operational need that it has to be in the countryside, just not near residential development. There's lots of sports pitches, golf courses, flat pieces of land within that those 30,000, 28,000 hectares of the proximity to the point of connection, which have not been considered because they don't they're not available from the landowner point of view. So I don't accept that we a proper survey of available sites closer to the point of connection and more appropriate, which won't cause the loss of valuable farmland and valuable countryside. The point raised by Councillor Langford-Smith about the analysis of the green benefits are essential. We can't just go and spend thousands on a Tesla and find that actually we can't park there. It's ridiculous to go for something jazzy when in fact putting it in the middle of a countryside is going to lose 10% in transmission of the energy. When putting it close to a point of connection, it will be much more efficient. We don't have any analysis of that, so we cannot suggest that this is a good thing for the wider community. The key concern I have, which I'm surprised hasn't been investigated further, is the point from the historical environment team, which says that this development will cause damage to the character of the setting of the listed buildings, the group of listed buildings at Silkstead. This field, which is the development site, is in the that Silkstead Farm complex, and is in direct line of sight to it, less than 400 meters away. The historic, the assessment of our historic environment team is that this will damage the character of that group of buildings. Not that it's going to be mitigated, but that it will be damaged, and I don't think that's acceptable. So I cannot support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. If I could just contribute my views to debate. Unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world. It would be ideal to put this right next to the connection point, but it has to go where the land is available. This is not top quality farmland, and it will be well screened. I don't believe you can see the field at the moment from Silkstead in any event because there are trees in the way, and the tree screening will be significantly beefed up. It will not take 20 years to effectively mature. I should think in 5 years this will have disappeared. It's only here for 30 years, not 50 or 60 years, Councillor Godfrey. So, and we have clear conditions that cover all the aspects that people have been concerned about. Noise, we're adding a new condition. For the construction period, there will be a construction plan which would be carefully monitored. The water's being sorted out, the digging by hand anywhere near the ancient trees, and the actual installation is well away from the actual ancient woodland. And I'm amongst the first to support anything to protect our ancient woodlands, which are absolutely irreplaceable. So everything is being done to make this work, and we have to accept things that we don't ideally want to have in the countryside if we're going to move away from a carbon rich economy and move to using renewable sources of energy. We all expect to have electricity in our homes, and there is a price to pay for that, and this is part of that price. So on balance, and all planning decisions are a balance, I will be supporting the officer recommendation. So if there are no more contributions, we will move to the decision. This application is recommended by our officers for approval. So can I see all those in favour, please? And those against? And abstentions? Okay, so that application is approved. We will now take a break for coffee and return at 11 o'clock. Thank you. All right, members, if we could settle down, please. Welcome back to the Planning Committee. We're now on agenda item 7, which is about the erection of a new 4-bedroom dwelling house at 3 Grafton Road, Winchester. And our presenting officer is Cameron Taylor. Good morning, Cameron. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So yes, this presentation regards to the erection of a new 4-bedroom house, which will also include the demolition of an existing garage at Paintersfield House, which is number 3 Grafton Road. Here we have the location plan, the site marked by the red outline. I'll just note the dwelling itself is situated on the eastern side of the plot, with the garage which is to be demolished along the western boundary. And on this, I'll also just highlight from number 2 to number 8 along number 2 to number 8 Grafton Road, along with 29 Christchurch Road. These are listed buildings. Here we have the existing and proposed block plan, with the existing being top and the proposed being the bottom, with the proposed dwelling being shown by the red rectangle and the garage which is to be demolished shown by the blue outline on the bottom plans. Next, we have an aerial photograph with a site marked by the yellow triangle. I'll just highlight the existing dwelling located just to the east of the yellow triangle itself, and again, just the listed buildings to the north of the site. Followed by the site plan, with the left-hand plan being the existing and the right-hand plan being the proposed. Followed by the proposed elevations, with the top left and bottom left, the top left being the front, the bottom left being the rear, and the plans on the right-hand side being both side elevations. Next, we have the street scene, with the top being the existing and the bottom being proposed. Next, we have a photo which is looking towards the site, with the existing dwelling being that with the red door. And on the right-hand photo, I'll just note this tree, centrally within the photo, is one of the trees proposed to be removed. Followed by additional photo, which is now looking towards the site of the proposed dwelling, with the red garage on the right-hand side of both photos, that which is to be demolished, along with on the right-hand photo, this tree slightly set further back is one also to be removed, with the two along the boundary, which two being retained. Followed by the photos which are along Grafton Road, with the left-hand one looking towards the west, towards Christchurch Road, with the existing dwelling being this here where the mouse currently is. On the right-hand photo, that is looking towards the east, towards Edgar Road, with the proposed dwelling being situated behind this tree here, which is within the curtilage of number 5 Grafton Road. Next, you have 2 photos now looking into the site itself, followed by proposed basement and ground floor plans. And the proposed first floor and roof plans. That concludes my presentation, with the officer recommendation being for approval. Thank you.
Would you like to just talk us through the update sheet, please, Cameron?
Yes, with regards to updates for this, on page 69 of the report, it has been updated as to an error on the system, which it brought the wrong ward across. So it should read as St Michael Ward and not Southwick and Wickham Ward. Followed by an update on page 76, which is in relation to the heritage, the historic environment impacts, and this update my orientations of this. Just updating the section which shows the proposal will not result in harm to significance of setting and historic interest of listed building, and this to be replaced with the proposal will result in less than substantial harm to the significance of listed building. And again on page 76, we're replacing paragraph 4, which starts the application is within the Christchurch Road Conservation Area, and that's to be replaced with as that is worded within the update sheet. And then the addition of 2 additional conditions, number 20 and 21. Number 20 is for a levels condition, which is as word there, which is no development site or work shall site process shall begin. So detailed plans including cross-section, existing and proposed ground levels, the development and the boundary of the site to be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority. And condition 21 is removing permitted development rights specifically to those A, C, D and E. That concludes with the updates. Thank you.
So just for those of us who don't carry these things in our memory banks, could you just confirm what classes A, C, D and E are?
So class A is general extensions to the dwelling house itself. Class C is other additions and alterations to the roof, which don't count as dormer windows. Class D is porches and Class E is outbuildings.
Thank you. Right, we now turn to the public speaking, and we have two objectors to start with, Liam Kilpatrick and Nicholas Page. Mr. Kilpatrick, welcome. Thank you very much. You have up to 3 minutes. The microphone, there you go, and you start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Good morning. I would like to point out that there's not a single drawing provided that is to scale. All of them say in the legend, do not scale from this drawing. How can permission be provided if we don't know the exact dimensions of what is being asked for? The proposed plan for 3A requires the excavation of an enormous basement that is the same size as the footprint of the house, roughly 10 meters in one direction, 10 the other, and over 4 meters deep. This will generate circa 400 cubic meters of excavated material. Digging this excavation will require over 100 builders' skips to be removed from the site. The whole will require no less than 121 8-meter long piles to support and stop any collapse from around the property. This excavation is shown to be less than 2 meters from the neighbouring properties on the east and the west. There has been no submission of an engineering plan. There has been no method statement as to how this will be done. There is no traffic management plan. There's no surveyor's report to clarify feasibility. There's no health and safety assessment with a hole in the side of the ground of that. There's no mention of any legally required third-party wall agreements. There's no documentation that describes the type of heavy machinery that would be required to dig the piles and remove the soil itself. The excavation of this size will also cut through all the root systems of the protected trees, killing them. Okay. There is also a nutrient neutrality report that states that there will be grey water recycling system with a tank for 2 houses. That includes the existing house at number 3 and the proposed new house at 3A. There are no plans that show where and what the scale of this tank would be. The report also states that they can achieve nutrient neutrality based on only 2.4 people living there. The design shows 4 double bedrooms, 3 upstairs bathrooms, 2 further WCs on the ground floor, and a basement laundrette, and a kitchen, all producing wastewater. Number 3 also has 4 double rooms already. That's potentially 16 people in total and not 2.4 as is required. The impact on the neighbours has been extensive for the last 3 years as he has tried to update and do number 3 Grafton Road. We have put up with builders, late night working, weekend working, and all the conflicts of considerate constructors. He's fallen out with every single builder that has been on that property, and he's still not finished it 3 years down the road, which should have taken only 6 months. He has also recently been convicted in a civil court as a slum landlord. He also has 2 outstanding court cases in London and court enforcement orders that are about his building practices that are causing damages to neighbouring properties of another rented property in London. He's not fit to develop that property or do anything of that scale.
3 minutes, but members of the committee may have questions of clarification for you. Members, do we have any questions for clarification for the neighbour? No, I think you were very clear. You were making your point very, very clearly. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you. If you
Thank you very much.
Switch off the microphone as you go. Thank you. We now have the supporter, Derek. I beg your pardon. I don't know how to pronounce that. Earlywich. Is that good enough? Good. Mr. Earlwich, welcome, and you also have up to 3 minutes from when you start speaking. If you'd like to switch the microphone on, just press the button. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members of Planning Committee, good morning. I would like to begin to acknowledge by acknowledging that this planning application has taken some time to reach this stage. It's important to note that we began this journey over 2 years ago with a pre-planning application to ensure that we addressed all potential concerns at the outset. And we have worked diligently to incorporate feedback from the local authority and all relevant consultants. Throughout the process, we have carefully considered and responded to every comment and concern. This has been a collaborative effort and to ensure that the final proposal thoroughly aligns with the planning policies. We have taken on board the valuable insights from insights provided and have made significant adjustments where necessary, including refining the design and ensuring that the proposal fits naturally within the existing streetscape of Grafton Road. A key design feature of this proposal is that the new house will be inspired by the adjacent property at number 3, Grafton Road, which was built in around 1855. During this period, it was common practice to build houses in groups of 2 to 4 identical buildings. And therefore, it is not unusual to see pairs of houses alongside one another in this area. And this proposed development continues that historic pattern, ensuring that the new dwelling blends seamlessly with the existing row of homes. The design of the proposed dwelling has been carefully tailored to match the scale, materials, and architectural style of number 3, preserving the historical integrity of the area while introducing a modern, energy-efficient home. The new house will complement the existing streetscape and provide a sympathetic addition to the character of Grafton Road. In addition, the applicant is fully committed to delivering a sustainable home. The proposal includes renewable energy sources such as photovoltaic panels and ground source heat pump system. We will also incorporate a grey water recycling system and SADs, further reducing the environmental impact of the development. In conclusion, we have thoroughly addressed all concerns raised during the pre-planning and formal application stages, and we respectfully ask the committee for positive consideration of this proposal. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sticking within your 3 minutes. Members, do we have any questions of clarification? Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Earlwich. Concerns being expressed by objectors and by the officers about the loss of trees, which is obviously a feature of the of Grafton Street. What are you doing to enhance or preserve the character of the area against the loss of these trees?
Okay, surely. So we've had agriculturalist consultant on board since the day one at pre-planning application already, and just to make sure that we know which trees will be affected. The main tree in question is actually a yew hedge tree. It's a very low quality tree, category C, that has actually been planted by the applicant's father at the time to provide screening. Now it's very overgrown and it looks like a tree. All the 3 trees in front actually are part of that hedge. But we will be replanting the trees at the back. So the life expectancy of those trees at the front are 10 years as of when assessment was made, which is about 2-3 years ago now. So they will naturally disappear from the street scene in about 7 years time. And we are just making sure that there is a replanted tree at the back that is actually screening better between the neighbors.
Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. I see from the application there's going to be 4 bedrooms. There's only parking space for 2 cars. So where do you think the other cars might be parking?
So again, I understand there's been a big objection about the car parking spaces. Now, just want to point out that number 3 Grafton Road's got currently a garage space, and it actually has a permission to park off street as well. We are actually making sure that number 3 to begin with has got decent parking space, which is 2 parking spaces, which is in aligned with the policies. And the additional 2 parking spaces for number 3A for the new property is also aligned with the policy, and we didn't want to provide more parking spaces, as there is still a lot of when we've been looking around with the transport consultant that I'm aware is not part of this fully covered as a full report, but there wasn't much strain on the streets for and it wasn't necessary to provide any additional parking spaces. It's a family unit. It's not desired to have more than according to the planning policy.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the new property is 2 parking spaces, whereas policy would sort of normally say 3 parking spaces. It is in a sustainable location, so will there be any cycle parking or cycle storage at all on the new property?
Yes, we've accommodated a storage literally just behind the gate, proposed gate next to the side footpath. Together with bin storage for a cycle store or for potential cycles.
Good, that answered my question too. Thank you very much indeed. I don't think there are any more questions. You may return to your seat. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Cameron, did you want to add anything following the contributions from the public?
I've got nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move to questions on the report. My question, if I may, do we have a construction management plan? Given as the neighbour pointed out, you know, it's going to be quite a major operation, and if we don't, can we put one in, an additional condition?
So we haven't received one up from this application. However, in line with other applications, we have permitted we can allow for condition in order for them to submit a construction management plan pre-commencement to any works beginning. So if the committee feel that necessary, we could add that as an additional condition.
I think that would be, given that this is significantly more than most similar sized constructions in Winchester. It's more than we're used to. So I think we should just have a good look at that plan and make sure that it's going to be considerate and respect the neighbours and do all the things it needs to do. Okay. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I also was going to ask about the construction. Are we allowed to condition the way in which the waste is disposed of? Obviously, with that level of excavation, there is going to be a significant amount of waste coming out. And are we able to condition working hours to minimise disruption to the neighbours?
It is controlled by different regimes, Chair. However, there's no harm in adding a bullet point to the construction management plan that they just tell us what they're doing. So it's not like we're assessing it, but they will tell us and make sure we're satisfied that it won't cause like a neighbour amenity thing when we're looking at the other matters, if that's acceptable.
Thank you, Chair. My other question was, is there a requirement for a party wall agreement? The resident was concerned about lack of party wall. I thought that was only if you literally are doing construction that adjoined another property. So it's a question of clarification, please.
It's not really for you members, it would be for the applicant to worry about party wall agreements as a civil private law matter.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. Parking. What I saw on the plans that I understand was the parking spaces are only 2, which is insufficient, and they're also a very small size. So that gives us another problem because that goes against their policies. And also card charging. There's nothing that I can see in there about the car park about charging on that. Have you got any comments on that, Cameron, before I come on to the second question?
I say, with regards to the parking itself, within the SPD, it notes 2.4 by 4.8 stand for parking spaces. I say, I've measured the spaces provided with regards to the pillars within the site, and they are measured to be over 4.9 metres for both properties and go up to about 5.6, nearly 5.7 metres long. So with regards to those 2 spaces, they do meet the required parking dimensions as per our SPD. Whilst there only being 2, the site is considered to be within a sustainable location with good access to public transport as well as access to the centre of Winchester itself through walking, with good walking pedestrian access available, which is why we consider the 2 spaces would be adequate in this instance for those.
Thank you, that's reassuring. The second point is nitrates. We're saying that there's going to be 2.4 people in that house that's got 4 double bedrooms. That doesn't seem to sort of equate to our policies, really, does it?
Chair, we follow the advice and the methodology of Natural England, and we don't, we're not necessarily, which is that taking an average across the entire district. So that's the way that does play out, and we can't look at individual properties and make individual assessments about whether in this case we should be having a higher sort of occupancy rate. It would just overcomplicate matters, and Natural England will look at that. This application was on hold for quite a long time because of, that's correct, isn't it? Because of the nutrients issue. So they have spent a lot of time looking at that. If members really feel that that is an issue, we can ask or put a condition on to restrict the basement from, it shouldn't be bedrooms because they're not shown as bedrooms, and so it is being assessed as a 4-bedroom dwelling. But you'd have to be satisfied in yourself that that was necessary, given what I just said about the methodology, or if there's any other reasons. It came out in the representations as well, didn't it? I just wanted to clarify there is a bike storage area shown on the plans as well. Thank you.
Actually, I think conditioning that the basement should not be used for bedrooms, given the circumstances and the nitrate situation. I think that's a reasonable condition to add.
And we'll put reasons for nutrient neutrality.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just going back to the basement, and with this being in a conservation zone, are there any requirements for any archaeological surveys to be done, sort of, with its specific position in Winchester, if anything were to be found?
So there were no triggers which are highlighted on the GIS system, but then I have undertaken discussion with our archaeologist, and she raised no objections to the proposal from archaeology grounds.
Right, if there are no more questions, members, on the report, we will move to debate. Anybody for Councillor Laming?
I am concerned with this particular development because to me it seems to be overdevelopment of a small area in a conservation area. I agree that the plans that we've seen look as if it maintains the integrity of that particular design of that road, but I am extremely worried about the size of the buildings on the plot, as well as other things. So I'm not sure whether I can support this.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think that this development is making good use of a limited space in bringing in a new property that is not quite mirrors, but is similar to the style of the neighbouring properties. and reflects the 4 properties on the other side of the road in the same street, in having a reasonable Victorian style that supports the character of the area. Much more so, I believe, than the property at number 5, which has been extended twice in the last 20 years, or the rebuilt property opposite, property 3A. Interestingly, both of which were supported by objectors to this scheme, but that's how it is. I think this is a good use of land, and actually improves the character of the area if it's done properly.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I agree with Councillor Godfrey in regards to the design of the property. It is a 4-bed home, but we do need more of those types of homes in Winchester to free up the smaller homes for sort of young people to be able to afford. And the development is in a sustainable location, and although the parking is one less than we would normally require, we don't actually have a parking requirement in our emergency oh God, it's the second time today, emerging local plan, and with it being in the sustainable location, there are bus services and easy cycle routes into Winchester for that. So I'll be supporting the application, and particularly welcome the additional condition in regards to the construction management plan, especially with all that soil that will need to be removed.
If I could just add, I'd like to commend the applicant for taking pre-application advice approach to this, because it is a complicated and difficult site, and obviously, you know, it's controversial, and understandably neighbours are very concerned. I hope that the 2 new conditions that we're going to add to this, one on the construction plan and one on the use of the basement, will at least go some way to reassuring them. And as our legal advisor has said, that the party wall issues are a civil matter, but should be properly addressed by the applicant with their neighbours. But I do echo other contributions that have said it's good to see a design which respects and reflects the design of the neighbouring houses, the better ones anyway. And it's good to see that people are prepared to put the extra money into good design in Winchester. Thank you for that. So I will obviously be supporting the officer's recommendation. So if there's no more contributions to debate, we'll go to.
I just
I beg your pardon.
Can I just confirm that the working time informative will be added to the conditions? Is that?
It's going to be part of the construction management plan, I believe. Is that right?
Normally done as an informative.
It is already
in the informative.
Yes.
It's already in the informatives, but we're going to beef it up by putting it in the construction plan as well. Okay, so we will now move to the decision. This application is recommended for approval by our officers. Can I see all those in favour of approval, please? And those against? 1 against. Thank you. So that is approved. Thank you. And we will next move on to the next application in a couple of minutes. And the presenting officer is again Cameron Taylor. So if we're all ready and we've got all the people necessary in the room. Okay, thank you. Over to you, Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this presentation is regards to proposed 3 new kennel blocks and the replacement of 2 isolation units with associated paddocks at 3 Oak Kennels along Botley Road. Here we have the location plan with the site marked by the red outline. I'll just highlight the nearest residential property is Moordown, which is situated here, along with Bishop's Waltham Highway Depot. Next we have the existing and proposed block plan, the left-hand plan being that of the existing, and the right-hand plan being that of the proposed. I will just quickly read through what the annotations say. They're a bit small on the plans. So where the mouse currently is, notes an existing tree screen. The next one along is existing blockwork wall, which is to be raised approximately 2.7 meters in overall height throughout its length. Then towards the right, we have additional tree screen, followed by this one, which is the new kennel block. Again, the rear-facing brick acoustic wall, which is approximately 2.7 meters high. And then the final one on the right-hand side, note that this block 1 is going to have 18 kennels. Then we just get down to the block number 2, which is known to have 13 kennels. And then this next annotation notes another rear-facing brick acoustic wall of approximately 2.7 meters high. And then the one just above that again notes new kennel, which is kennel block number 3, which has 28 kennels. And here we have a wide aerial photograph of the area, the site marked by the yellow triangle. And I'll just note the depot, as I mentioned previously, again with this being Moordown, which is the nearest residential property. Followed by a closer up aerial photograph where I can note the existing kennels centrally located along with additional kennels on the northern boundary. Again, just in the top part of this photo where the mouse currently is that nearest residential property. Next, we have the site plan where we note 3 blocks, 1, 2, and 3, with block 1 being located on the eastern boundary of the kennels, block number 2 on the southern boundary of the kennels, and block number 3 on the western boundary of the kennels, and the isolation units are being relocated to more central location within the sort of dog paddock walking area. Here we have a close aerial photograph of the site itself. Well, just quickly note the location of block 1 is along this eastern boundary, block 2 this southern boundary, and block 3 this western boundary. Again, with the isolation units being located a bit more centrally within these dog walking runs, paddocks, as I've referred to them in my report. Here are the plans for block 1. Followed by the site elevations, which typically the site elevations for all the kennels. So I've just put this one up as a large one for reference, and all the other following plans showing the blocks. I've included this slightly smaller on the right hand side, just as for reference. Next, we have the block 2 plans, where we can see it joining with block 3 in itself. Followed by the block 3 plans. Again, we can see it, the connection between block 2 and block 3 there in the top left-hand corner of the plans. And here we have the isolation unit plans. Followed by a street view, which takes towards the front of the site, where I'll note the kennels are situated behind these buildings here, with this one where the mouse currently is being the existing admin building. Here we have a view towards the northern boundary within sort of eastern paddocks, where this is the existing isolation block with the existing central kennels in the left-hand side of the photo. Then a photo which is looking more towards the eastern boundary, followed by a view towards this, which is the western boundary, along with the northern boundary being located on the right-hand side of the photo. I'll just highlight the other isolation block there, just in the background of the photo. Followed by a wider angle photo looking towards the western boundary. That concludes the officer's presentation, with his recommendation being for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now go to our public speakers. And first we have a parish council representative, Councillor Tracy Conduct. Good morning. It's still morning, isn't it? Yes.
Good morning.
You have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. We feel that the increase in the number of the kennels will undoubtedly have an adverse effect on all surrounding properties. And we would argue against point 5.14, given the distance that exists between the application site and the distance of any neighbouring residential properties, there would be no adverse impact on the residential amenity in the area. The topography of the surrounding area is such that noise travels to greater distances than in other locations. Dog barking has been known to exceed all mitigation measures in circumstances such as this. Whilst the noise survey carried out by Clark Saunders Acoustics states that the dogs would not make any more noise than the busy road that the kennels sit on, we would disagree. As although the road is busy, it isn't 24 hours and predominantly only commute times. Also, dogs barking is a completely different pitch and can be incessant and unrelenting, especially in the summer months when windows are open and residents want to enjoy their gardens. As you can see from all the objections from all the neighbouring houses, they have already stated the issues with the noise, which I've previously stated, is unrelenting. It's not so much that we also feel that there's been no documentation presented that give us the reason why so many extra kennels are needed in this particular site. Doubling the amount is huge. We already have another kennels further up the road. As much as I appreciate everything that has been said, I can't reiterate enough to you just how the noise of these kennels is at the moment to all the surrounding properties. I would urge, and maybe Cameron Taylor can give me any idea on how it would be best, or if this application was granted, what sort of noise debating or sort of like cushioning that there could be, because the sound travels for miles. It's not just the immediate neighbour. Where it's actually placed and at certain times it literally does sort of like reverberate round and cause distress. So my point is, regardless of anything else, the noise is unbelievable, and by doubling the amount, I've not seen anything that actually convinces me that it would not give us a detrimental impact to the surrounding properties. Thank you.
Thank you. If you don't mind just waiting in case. And I've got a question actually. Do you know if residents have made a complaint to the City Council on the basis of noise from the kennels?
I don't. I
think Environmental Health Department.
No, well, possibly. I don't know. I don't have any figures if they have or if they haven't. We have had comments at the parish council, and when that came in, obviously, I think because it affects not a huge amount of properties, as in local, to that site, the actual noise does go a lot further.
Mm.
So I think sometimes people, because it's like their address doesn't fit in that gap, if you like. It's just what it is.
Okay, we'll ask the officer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more questions, members? No? Okay, thank you very much. If you could just switch the mic off.
Oh.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Patrick Barry, representing the kennels, I understand. Mr. Barry, welcome. And you also have up to 3 minutes. That's it when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning on behalf of the applicant. I would like to start by acknowledging that the officer's report provides a detailed and balanced assessment of the proposal. The proposal is in accordance with policy MTRA 4 of the Local Plan Part 1, which supports the expansion of existing rural businesses that contribute to the local economy. the extension of these kennels will enable the business to meet increasing demand, supporting job retention and creation in the local economy. In this case, the kennels will directly address requests for additional capacity by Hampshire Police Service and Hampshire County Council Social Services. It will also service growing needs from Winchester City Council and other neighbouring authorities at Test Valley, Eastleigh, East Hampshire, all of whom use the site as a reception centre for stray dogs. While some concerns have been raised about the impact of the proposal on the amenity of neighbouring properties, the officer's report details very clearly why there would be no detrimental impact. We've considered the comments from objectors, however, we feel that the site is well located for its current use and the proposed expansion. It has good connections to the surrounding settlements and the key public services that use the kennels. It sits within a developed context associated with the wider business uses of Three Oaks, the Hampshire County Council depot and the water treatment facility. Collectively, these uses establish a background noise environment. We accept that there are residential properties in the vicinity, but these properties lie within the existing noise environment I've just described, and the proposal includes measures to ensure that the impact will be minimal. The Council's Environmental Health Officer describes the impact as barely perceptible. In conclusion, the application is supported by the relevant development plan policies. It presents an opportunity to support a local business and crucially to extend capacity to cater for increased demand from key public services. It does not result in any material harm to the environment or the amenity of local residents. For these reasons, we hope that you will support your officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. If I could just ask about the number of kennels and dogs. So the kennel at the moment has a license for 121 dogs, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Is there any chance, are they going to apply for a new license for more dogs, or is that license going to remain?
There'll be a new license application for additional dogs. Just in terms of the increase, if I'm allowed to just explain if that's helpful. Just at the moment, the site services they have reservations from the Hampshire Police Service and the social services, who on an ongoing basis reserve kennels in the event that they're needed for the services they provide. Also, the dog wardens and all the authorities I mentioned also look to reserve the kennels on an ongoing basis, and the extension is primarily to satisfy the demands placed on the kennels by those services.
And where's my thing? The other question I have is about exercise areas. So is there a recommended minimum area for exercising dogs, or is that up to the kennels themselves? I'm just wondering if there's any legislation on that.
If I'm being totally honest, I don't know. All I know is that the exercise area is provided up on the other side of the kennels from the residential properties. Obviously, as sort of detailed in the officer's presentation as well, there's a car park serving the depot between the residential properties and the kennels themselves, and it obviously has that commercial environment which it generates a background noise level. If the exercise is a concern in terms of noise generation, if that was the nature of the question.
And at the moment, there are no noise attenuation walls or anything, are there, around the existing kennels? So the new kennels being around the outside with these extra walls that are designed to focus the noise back into the site, presumably. Do you think that will improve the general level of noise, despite the fact that there are going to be more dogs on the site?
I'm being honest, I think it will probably retain the noise levels as they are, because that's what's been reported in the Environmental Health Officer's comments. There's a condition requiring provision of the wall on the northern and eastern boundaries and extended height. There is a wall on the northern boundary, but there's an extension in the height of that to improve the noise attenuation. I think the argument is that the impact wouldn't increase, and that is obviously the test of the planning application, because the test relates on what is happening, what's not the existing situation.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. It was furthermore on the noise. The condition, obviously, they mentioned in the larger walls, specifically so on two of the boundaries, they are brick walls. Would there be anything applied to the brick at all to sort of mitigate reflected noise then carrying further either upwards or towards the main population of Bishop's Waltham?
In terms of the brick walls are part of the construction of the kennel, so obviously the brick walls will be contained with a roof beyond them. So in terms of reverberating noise, if it does deflect, it's deflected up and is contained back into the courtyard that forms the central part of the kennels.
Just as supplementary, so in the roof space, would there be anything, even soft padding, anything like that at all to try and absorb some of the noise that would potentially leak out and affect residents?
Based on the noise assessment, there wouldn't be additional impact on the residents based on the assessments that have been undertaken, and the environmental health officers obviously endorsed that assessment. In terms of further noise mitigation measures on the roof, I don't think the applicant would be opposed to having an informative or something on the decision that would ask him to look into that to see if there's any additional attenuation that could be provided. I don't want to commit to it because we haven't looked at it, but if you wanted to add an informative seeking that, I don't think the applicant would have any objection to that.
Okay, thank you. We'll have a word with the officers about that. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. So you're going from 121 dogs to 235. Are they day boarders?
Yes, well, it varies depending on the nature of the demands put on it, whether it's by the local, by actual members of the public, because it is open to the public as well. It serves the public services and private clients. So it depends on the nature of the people using it. In terms of the local services, there is overnight stays at the kennels, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ashwell.
Could I just ask about the whereabouts is the car parking for members of the staff, and if you're going to have all these additional dogs where people drop the dogs off?
There's an existing car park to the south of the kennels on the frontage of the building known as Three Oaks. It's quite a substantial car park. So in terms of the existing van, there's sufficient capacity in the existing car park, and there's been no issues raised by officers in relation to car parking.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. The existing, the current noise levels, are you aware of any noise monitoring at the nearest receptors, nearest residential properties that has taken place?
I'm not aware of any existing noise complaints or any issues with the environmental health officers. They haven't raised those and through the consultation response, which generally would be the norm if there was existing noise issues.
I'm just surprised there hasn't been, but wouldn't it be sensible to get a baseline now so that you know what whether or not, before you make the investment, whether or not this is actually currently controlled in a satisfactory manner?
There has been an existing baseline noise assessment as part of the planning application, and that was submitted with the planning application. That establishes the background noise level and then assesses the impact of the proposals based on that baseline level. And the conclusion is the proposed level will be equivalent to the baseline level because of the existing baseline. And it's not just, sorry, apologies, it's not just the dogs that would contribute to that. There's other issues like road noise, the commercial uses that all contribute to that baseline noise environment. So there has been an assessment that's been reviewed by the council's environmental health officer, who's endorsed the methodology of the assessment and its conclusions, concluding with the impact would be barely perceptible. That was they were his words.
I don't think any more questions. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you. So we revert to our officer. Just making a few notes. So, Daniel, if I could just ask a legal question about should the City Council have expressed an interest in this application, as our dog warden is using this facility, and it's a request from our dog warden and other city councils around the area that are a part of the reason for this application coming before us?
No, we're not the landowner and we're not the applicant. So, albeit we obliquely use the actual facility, there is no, if you like, conflict of interest in that regards.
Okay, well, we've mentioned it anyway, just for the avoidance of any doubt. None of us have any. None of us have been approached by the dog warden to support this. Right, let's move on. Cameron, do you have anything to add following the public contributions, please?
I've got nothing further to add following public contributions. Thank you, Chair.
So, members, questions on the report to our officer. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a question on the overnight accommodation, because on page 108 it says the proposed development would not involve any additional overnight accommodation and would therefore not increase the nutrient load at the Solent water environment. And yet the supporter, Mr. Barry, has explained that there will actually be overnight accommodation, or does that water requirement only relate to humans?
The Natural England methodology is based upon 2.4 humans occupying a dwelling. Obviously, the application is not for a dwelling, but yeah, I haven't thought about dogs and
It's just not relevant for overnight accommodation for dogs. It is humans when we're looking at nitrate neutrality. That is the only way we're looking at that. We might be able to apply different logic, but that is our system as we have at the moment. Which came from the courts, you know, and what they're doing, why they're doing that.
And I believe that the solid wastes are dealt with in a different way from human solid waste.
Thank you, Chair. My question was based on the fact that every time I've been to the kennels, not in the last 5 years, because I haven't had a dog to take there, but prior to that, every time I've been, because of the construction of the kennels, the flooring requires them to be at an angle, and there are drains running through the middle of the corridors so that all the kennels can be kept clean of urine. And therefore there is a significant water use at the facilities, and therefore my question was about the water use.
I understand your question, but I think it's not covered by the requirements at this stage. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. It was more in regards to the noise once again. I know the applicant has mentioned that they would sort of, you know, welcome and informative. Would we be able to sort of beef that up a little bit? I'm looking specifically at our first application today in regards to the battery storage, whereby we added an additional condition in regards to noise that related to the noise report. It seems like the predominant sort of objection from the parish and concerns from local residents is around the noise. So I'm wondering if we can really sort of beef that up with such a significant sort of increase to the number of dogs.
Chair, condition 6 does deal with the blockwork wall that needs to be increased and then implemented, but we can add an extra line to that saying details of noise attenuation measures will be submitted to and approved in writing, as you had from the applicant. They're willing to explore something further. I think that would be reasonable. That doesn't guarantee that there would be anything extra that would come out of that, but it does open up a reasonable opportunity for us to look at that based on what we have heard today, if members thought that was appropriate.
Can I ask whether that was sort of, would that be specific to sort of acoustic dampening, or is this just more we're waiting to hear from the applicant of what they would sort of put forward, really?
The second, waiting to hear what they might put forward, but we can pick it up with our environmental protection officer. They might have more suggestions, but we don't have anything specific because it hasn't come out in their acoustic report at the time. But there's no harm in exploring it further with no guarantees. And if there isn't anything further can be done, then the noise will be contained to the levels that are expected anyway.
Perhaps we could raise with them the possibility of attenuation in the roofs of the kennels, and that might add to the insulation anyway. If they're using insulation, maybe they can look at noise attenuating insulation. Right, Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Proposed condition 5 about the noise doesn't give any details of what those recommendations are in the conditions themselves, and unfortunately I don't think the report, the updated report, is now available on the website. It's only failing for me, so not possible to if you want to view that. Could we just be very clear what those conditions are, what the terms of the condition are, will be, and perhaps update the published condition when it's if it is agreed.
With regards to the noise impact assessment, so we had the updated one which noted the 2.7 metre increase to the block wall, which is why that condition was added. Which is why condition 5 is to ensure that, one, they follow recommendations, which includes that 2.7 metre wall. With the following of condition 6 is to just ensure that it's done before it's brought into use with regards to the kennels themselves. It's to ensure that they do follow the recommendation, which within this noise impact assessment does note the addition of the block wall.
Chair, I'm just confirming the report is available on the public access system, and there was an updated version as well. Condition 5 is worded in a fairly standard way when we want to make sure that the elements of those report and the component parts are extracted, which is in the recommendations section, and then followed, rather than, I mean, you can list the whole lot out again, but it's a fairly standard way of doing that because the report does the talking.
For my benefit, then, could you explain what the recommendations are? Because I cannot today see the updated report.
And my iDocs has just crashed as well, so I also can't see it. But Dan has it open there. But you might know what
I don't believe
said in it anyway.
I do not believe the report is available.
Okay, well we'll take that outside the meeting, but I think the point is the recommendation was primarily the raised block work anyway, so that was what was in there. I'm not aware that there is anything else specific. Do you want to explain your conditioning there further?
So yeah, so within that the updated noise impact report, it was primarily the addition of the height of the 2.7 metre block wall. That was the recommendation within the noise impact assessment, and so to ensure it was followed, which is why condition 5, as Lorna said, is sort of a very sort of general wording for it to be brought forward to ensure the recommendations and findings within that report are followed. Condition 6, which then goes on to discuss the 2.7 metre block wall further, is just to ensure that that block wall is put in before they actually bring the kennels into use, just to ensure that mitigation method is there before any dogs then occupy any of the kennels.
If I may, thank you. Knowing the difficulty in monitoring noise in these similar to motorbikes, which is where I learned about decibels and all that Tidridge stuff. Do we have in reports sufficient clarity about what is the maximum permitted amount of noise that a receptor can expect before an environmental protection officer would be able to support a nuisance report?
I think, Councillor Godfrey, we need to, there's a statutory nuisance level, and I think we need to allow residents to report if there is a problem, which is not anticipated, and that is why this is being recommended for approval, because that aspect has been addressed by the Environmental Agency, our protection officer. But if in the future it becomes an issue, then that can, but we do need residents to report those issues And they are the best receptors in my experience, because as the parish council representative explained, you know, it depends on the weather and the wind blowing and the, you know, sometimes the noise carries in particular directions and sometimes it doesn't. So all those aspects that the residents will be aware of, they need to make you know, they need to keep a diary if there's an issue. They need to keep a diary and how much of a noise problem it is, and then report that. So, but that is not anticipated to be an issue, or it's certainly not any more than the current operating business provides, and the walls and stuff are attenuation for that. TV, Matthew. So I think it's covered, and I think it's equally covered in the extra bit that we've asked for in a condition as well about looking at extra attenuation. Okay, sorry about that. Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the welfare of the dogs, do we know how much like exercise space each dog needs, or how many you can put in one kennel?
I don't think that's a planning consideration. I think that's a regulatory thing which is outside of our. We are limiting it to one per kennel, aren't we? So that's. I think that's to help with the noise, actually. So, but I think that's right, isn't it, Cameron?
Yeah, so condition 7 is attached, which is the approved kennel shall only be occupied by individual dogs and at no time occupied by 2, which was in the interest of the noise mitigation.
What I can say, Chair, is I've actually been looking at the regulations whilst you've been debating it, the alternative licensing regime. And in this regards, the planning control that this condition is seeking to put onto the particular use of the kennels is actually more strict than the licensing regime, because the licensing regime allows 2 dogs to occupy a kennel as long as they're from the same household. So your control is actually even stronger than what the licensing regime is saying.
Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a concern about the individual dogs only per kennel, because a lot of dogs get very anxious if they're used to living with another dog and then they're separated when they go to kennels. That can actually cause significant distress to the dog. So I think that condition may actually cause problems.
So the law is quite strict. I'm looking at the regime here now, providing boarding in kennels for dogs. Dogs within the premises must be prevented from coming into contact with other animals from outside the premise. Each kennel unit and the sleeping area must be free from drafts. Provide the dog with sufficient space to sit, stand at full height, lie down, fully stretched, wag its tail, walk, turn around without touching another dog or the walls. Have a floor area which is at least twice the area required for the dog in it to lie flat. And if built after that date on which these regulations come into force, have a floor area of at least 1.9 square meters. I can carry on. The law prescribes what is actually in the welfare of the dogs, not your own individual assessment as to what you think is right.
Can I just say that I think we're talking about the extra kennels, so the ones in the middle, whatever the regime is at the moment for those internal ones, are not changed by this condition, which is for the outside kennels. So I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming that that facility can be offered on the inside kennels.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, if there are no more questions, we will move to debate. Councillor White.
So I think we've given full investigation and taken into account the neighbours' concerns about noise, and I appreciate the new acoustic wall, the additional informatives that we put in about potentially mitigating the noise on the roof, and given that this is largely a commercial industrial area anyway, with other facilities there's already a certain amount of noise. I don't think this is going to have a big enough impact to justify rejecting, so I'll be supporting this application.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, it's a difficult sort of planning balance, because there is one particular area of noise which has been strongly expressed in regards to this application. I do think the sort of beefed up condition, the condition 6, will strengthen, and as our legal advice is given, this is stronger than the sort of regulations on welfare of dogs. So we are going further in regards to trying to mitigate that noise. I do have worries in the future about it, but that will then be something from our environmental protection environmental health and protection team through reports from that, and having the condition noise report as well, stating that there wouldn't be a significant impact, is something that we can then go back to and refer to should complaints start to come in. So I'm minded to support the application with that beefed up condition 6.
So if there's no more contributions to debate, this application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour, please? Thank you very much. So that is approved. And we'll now take just a very short break, couple of minutes whilst we change over the officers. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to item number 9, which is at the homestead Solomon's Lane, Sherrill Heath. And our presenting officer is Joe Toole. So over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for the erection of 2 detached dwellings with a widened access and a new access onto Solomon's Lane. This shows the location plan aged in red here, where the 2 dwellings would be located. The application site is to the south side of Solomon's Lane within the village of Sherrill Heath. The site forms a gap between 2 properties along Solomon's Lane, which is Westwood House here and Quince Cottage here. There's an existing dwelling house known as the Homestead, which is set back. in the site here. And the site comprises of short grass and general vegetation. There's a gradual slope eastwards up the site. However, the topography of the site is relatively flat on the ground here. This shows the block plan, which outlines the footprints of both plot 1 and plot 2 here, with the car parking arrangement here as well. It also depicts the accesses into the site as well. This shows the proposed site plan, again in more detail depicting the roof formats and designs here. The side elevations here show the garages that are attached to the property. And again, shows the new access and the extended access here with regards to the parking arrangement and the existing retained vegetation to the front. This shows the aerial photograph of the site with the red dot indicating the application site. The buildings here will be removed as part of this application as well, the outbuildings. So this shows the proposed floor plans and elevations for plot 1, the ground floor plans here, and the first floor plans here. So it's a 4-bed property. Also here, the elevations show the roof pitch and the design and materials of brickwork. The height is 8.8 meters. That's the same for plot 1 and plot 2. Yeah, that's just again shows plot 2 here. This shows the proposed street scene plans. So the first one here is facing Solomon's Lane, which you'd see from the site. And here you can see the gradual slope in land as well. This shows the street scene looking east, and here looking west as well at the bottom. Onto the photographs. This shows the access to the site. The colours indicate where the photographs were taken and the direction they were facing. So the red here shows the direction of the existing access here. And then the blue, again, showing the actual from the road scene. Here's some more photographs of the site, again, with the colours depicting where they've been taken from. Here again, you can see the vegetation along the front boundary on the blue. This shows the photographs of the neighbouring property here. And again, showing the depiction of the boundary treatment as well. This shows the photographs of the other neighbouring property on the other side, Westwood House, which is a chalet bungalow. And it depicts the site position. Again, some further angles of Westwood House here as well. This shows photographs of the homestead here on the side, which again, this is the red line here depicting the side view. And the green, again, facing where the actual plots would be placed. So as per the officer's report, the recommendation is for approval. This is subject to planning conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you think you could just run us through the update sheet as well, what's on there and why?
Yeah, sure. So part of the update sheet is a change to the B&G condition in terms of covering the 30-year period. And another one is a updated condition to add PD removal as well in terms of Class A, which relates to extensions being done to the properties, which would need to be formally considered by the planning authority.
Right, okay, thank you very much. So we now move to public speaking, and our first speaker is Sam Charles, Mr. Councillor Charles from the Parish Council. I know you've been waiting all morning, so thank you very much for that. Yeah. And now is your great moment. And you have up to 3 minutes. Thank you. We do have the opportunity to ask you questions of clarification afterwards, so.
This site is outside the settlement boundary for Sheffield Parish, which has already exceeded its number of houses allocated Winchester local plan and achieved the number of backfilled houses. Sheffield and Walden Chase have already been overdeveloped. Cheryl Heath is classified as unsustainable due to its lack of facilities. Got some new teeth. In this application, there is no continuous development frontage. Any form of development near here will not be compatible with the character of the village. You've got 80 houses down the road, already been passed, which is Morgan Yard, which people know about. Drainage, the right drainage settlement makes no reference to the fact that in the area there is a serious concern about foul water. The mains drainage flows down Solomon Lake and meets Winchester Road. The current infrastructure cannot support drainage requirements and existing housing. This frequently caused problems, and effluent has flooded several houses in the area. Morgan Yard development will be built on Solomon's Lane. Any additional houses further to Solomon's Lane will create an additional problem for those living at the bottom of the hill. Likewise, surface water streams down Solomon's Lane and floods the junction with which the latest incident is on the 26th of November 24 and again on the 27th of January 25, when houses at Winchester Road had to be pumped out containing. On this flooding caused sewers to come up out of the drains in Brooklyn, where the water flows down to the River Hamble. Southern Water recently used tankers to remove excess water, heavy rainfall, in order to prevent sewage coming up from the drains. The problem is due to overdevelopment in the village, where properties have constantly been added to the main line, which was installed in 1968 and is now serving 3 times the number of dwellings in the initially served. Because of the access of the stormwater, water is getting into the foul lanes. Flooding has started happening following a number of infills of development in the village because the Winchester Drainage Report notes for foul drainage, the applicant has indicated connecting to the main sewer, which is realistically sustainable option. It is unfortunate that this does not represent the situation, and residents who regularly have their homes flooded with raw sewage, which would disagree with the sustainable. We've had 4 houses, which are the post of which has been passed and now been built, has gone on to the main drains again.
I'm afraid that's the end of your 3 minutes, but
Oh, that's good.
we may well have some.
Stops me speaking.
We may have some questions for you, members. Do we have questions of clarification? I think we've read the report, the objection from the parish council, which goes into quite a lot of detail about the issues with the drainage, and we'll be asking officers about that, I'm sure. Is there anything else that members want to clarify with the parish council representative? No. Oh, Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you. Just looking at the map, it's not clear to me, where is the road access to Westwood Hoe, the property that appears to be on the corner? Is that in the side road or is that from Solomon's Lane?
I can't answer that.
We can ask the officer. Okay, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for being with us all morning. I hope you found it interesting. Okay, and we now move to the supporter, Mr. Philip Dudley. Mr. Dudley, welcome. And you also have up to 3 minutes, and you can start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'm the agent of this application. The site is within the defined village of Cheryl Heath, therefore development is acceptable under policy MTRA 3. The proposals are for 2 new detached dwellings with garages and parking. The site forms a gap between existing dwellings of Westwood Hoe and Quince Cottage, with a consistent and obvious built-up street frontage to Solomon's Lane. The existing landscape features on the site are to be retained, including the mature hedging to the front southern boundary, providing screening to Solomon's Lane. The existing access onto Solomon's Lane will be widened to serve one of the dwellings, and a new access is created to serve the other. The access has achieved the correct visibility displays for the speed limit and has no additional impact on highway safety. The new dwellings are designed with similar heights to the adjoining houses to the east, and their 2-storey masses replicates the majority of dwellings in this area. The new dwellings provide suitable garden and amenity areas in proportion to other recently built developments, and the necessary bin, cycle, car parking, along with EV points to all standards. The overall development achieves the same density as the adjoining houses, and site has to be viewed in context with the surrounding area, which is considered to be a built-up street frontage. There are no statutory objections to highways, ecology, drainage or landscaping. This is a policy compliant site and achieves the aims and objectives of the MPPF and local plan policies. The council's 5-year land supply and housing allocation is not a cap on development. MTRA 3 allows for the infilling within named villages. In summary, the application provides an opportunity to create 2 new detached dwellings within the existing character of the area that has been established by the adjoining developments that have been approved under the MTRA 3 policy. I trust that you will follow the recommendation and permit this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, we have an opportunity to ask questions of clarification. I have one myself, actually. On the plans, there are 2 new accesses, as well as the existing access to whatever it's called, the homestead. But you're saying that the plot 1 is going to share the access to the homestead, is that right?
Yes, there's the existing access to Homestead needs to be widened by 2.5 metres, so therefore it will just become a larger access for both houses, but obviously one will go off to that way and the other one will continue down to the Homestead.
Okay, so we're looking at a widened existing access and a new access. Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams?
My question was effectively the same, to be quite honest, and just the loss of the mature, very mature hedgerow to create sort of, you know, the 2 new widened accesses. And yes, so my question's sort of been answered. I would obviously prefer the retention of that hedgerow, but it's not really a question.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. Parish Council expressed concerns about the foul drainage. Do you think your proposal will deal with foul drainage adequately?
The foul drainage will connect to the existing mains foul drainage in Solomon's Lane, of which Southern Water have no objection, so it will not have an effect on the drainage.
Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. I know the road quite well, so the developments before this one, they only have 1 access into their sites. There's quite a few new houses down that side. So could you just explain why you have an additional access onto the site, whether you can't just have the 1?
It makes it very difficult when having 1 access. Obviously, if you look at the site plan, the way that the parking is and the garages are laid out, obviously by having 2, the cars can come into the site, park and turn and leave in a forward gear. If you were to lose the access to plot, whichever one is to the left, if it's plot 2, it means you'd have to then lose the 2 parking spaces. So that would have it would mean you wouldn't be able to turn and leave in a forward gear. It makes it very difficult to turn and still get 2 car parking spaces and the garages. So it's purely on the design. It's far safer to have 2 accesses so that people can turn and leave in a forward gear.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. If you'd like to return to your seat, thank you. Okay, so Joe, do you want to add anything before we come to questions?
Thank you, Chair. Just to add in terms of the housing allocation and targets for the site, as mentioned by the agent here, the policy MTRA 3 is separate to the housing allocations and targets to allow for additional developments in compliance with policy as well.
Okay. Right, so we now turn to questions on the report, please. Councillor White.
So this has been mentioned before on cases where there might be foul water drainage problems. I just trying to understand what weight we should give the cumulative effect of development in that area and in the neighbouring Waltham Chase. So the Parish Council aren't exaggerating in terms of the foul water drainage problems. The knock-on effect down Solomon's Lane to Winchester Road is, you know, we've heard about it from residents in Waltham Chase, and I'm just wondering what weight we can give that when we're making our decisions, despite the fact that Southern Water have said it's okay.
Yeah, I think, Madam Chair and Councillor, we always come back to this point, don't we, about how much weight do you put on a statutory consultee's response? I think Councillor Godfrey's question was quite pertinent in this regard of the agent. Southern Water haven't objected. The usual approach with regards to the law makes it quite clear that you've got to put great or considerable weight on a statutory consultee's response. And if you move away from that great and considerable weight from a statutory consultee, you've got to provide what the law quotes as cogent and compelling reasons as to why you've moved away from the statutory consultee here. So in that sense, that's the first redress you've got to have in relation to Southern Water's statutory response. Your next part of the question asks whether or not we can put weight upon anecdotal evidence from those that live in the community, the parishioners, and the locality. You can do, but ultimately you've got to weigh that into the balance here as to regards who's got the statutory duty to look after the sewers and foul water drainage, and that is Southern Water. It's not the parishioners, it's not the local people. So it all goes in the balance, is what I say. And where you place your weight is a matter of your own planning judgment.
Councillor Godfrey.
The supplementary planning document, the village design statement for Shedfield, covers this application. 2 points in there. One is design guideline 3. But clearly established building lines should be respected. What is the established building line for this side of Solomon's Lane?
Thank you, Chair. So this shows the block plan, which is a bit of the wider site, and you can see it is consistent with the other properties along this this road here. I can also pan out a bit wider as well. So there is somewhat of a uniform line, although the road does slightly bend back, but it doesn't drastically break the building line established here in terms of protruding very close forward to the road. It's still, as you can see here, set back within the site and pretty much in line with Quince Cottage here, albeit slightly forward. So I believe it does depict the building line of Solomon's Lane.
But that seems to show that the building line stops at Quince Cottage.
Well, in terms of building lines a line you take from the frontages and you draw it across. So I wouldn't say it stops there. The whole lane has a building line, if that makes sense. It would go all the way across.
Okay, so is there an established building line along the south side of Solomon's Lane? I think I can see it on the east of the development site, but from Quince Cottage to the west, there doesn't seem to be a clearly established building line. Is that right?
There's no hard and fast rules about what is building line, and in places like this, what you'll see, you've got such a variety. It would be very difficult to say that the building line is this or that or the other. You've got houses backwards and forwards, you've got little clusters of houses, you've got Westwood Ho that's set then to the side. It's all about character and context. It's not about keeping it as an exact science in line with one thing or the other. It's whether you think that this fits into what is in that context. And you can see there is a setback. There are different types of typologies and forms of development, sizes of development. So does this, is this sort of commensurate with that without harm?
It's the usual where's the harm question. Okay, Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to clarify the legal point on the sewage. When you say it's anecdotal, the information that we had today, what would you classify as being good information that we could use? Because this comes up time and time again, particularly in parts of my ward where we have a lot of problems.
Yeah, so for example, the parish council are well within their gift to commission their own drainage surveys to contradict or advocate against the approach of Southern Water. That's one example. Members of the public could rally and commission their own report. For example, you could crowdfund to do that. So it's really down to the locality and what they wish to do. Coming to committee saying this particular property flooded at that particular date, ultimately Southern Water are tasked with the duty. They have all the figures, the statistics, the amount of volume of effluent going through that particular sewer in that regard. So you would need quite cogent evidence to challenge what Southern Water are actually tasked and commanded to deal with as a matter of law. But yes, I say anecdotal. I don't mean that in any disparate. Yeah. Obviously, what an individual has to go through can be quite grave. But ultimately, to challenge or contradict a statutory undertaker is a very, very large undertaking, and one which an inspector would take a very dim view, in my respectful submission, if you were minded to go against what the statutory consultee was saying.
No, thank you very much for clarifying that. It's something that comes up time and time again. So we need to know where we are. Thank you.
Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you. Some advice, please, Chair. Where does an end of a row meet infill? Because it looks to me as if this is potentially, because the homestead is set back and Westwood Ho appears to have no access, is this not an end plot as opposed to an infill plot? So it could be the first plot as opposed to an infill plot, if that makes sense.
I think if you look at the block plan, you know, common sense would say it's not the end, because Westwood Ho is clearly the end, isn't it? So, yes. Well,
so when we've looked at this and the inspectorate have looked like this, this is almost what you would call like a grain pattern. It's more about how you experience the frontages in the locality, because when you're moving through an area, you've got different levels and different things and vegetation, and you'll be able to experience the buildings together with perhaps something that is the other side of it, rather than just assessing it purely on a block plan, which doesn't show you how the context feels in the area. So it's the two things as well. And that's what you did, Joe, wasn't it? When you looked at this, it was evidentially on site. It felt really quite continuous, notwithstanding on the grain pattern, there appears to be a bit of a gap, but it's consistent with the sort of decision making we have undertaken for MTRA3. So we do look at that.
And I looked on Google Maps and did a street view and drove through, and yeah. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So when walking along Solomon's Lane from Quince Cottage, you see the entrance into the homestead, and then you walk along to Black Horse Road, and there's a continuous hedge line with no visibility into the field to the left. There is no frontage after Quince Cottage. When you turn left into Black Horse Road, you find the frontage of Westwood Ho and on the left, and the other property on the right facing onto Black Horse Road. The front of the house is facing Black Horse Road, not Solomon's Lane. So there is no frontage beyond Quince Cottage. So I'm struggling to understand how you can have a continuous, an infill to a continuous frontage.
I understand what you're saying, Councillor Godfrey, and it's a planning balance. We've got to take a view. Is this an infill? Is this not an infill? Our officer is recommending approval because he considers that it is, and we have to look at it and make our own judgment on that question.
But can I ask then, what makes a frontage as opposed to a sidage? Frontage of a house is a front door, a front aspect of a building. It is not the side of a building.
I don't really have a response to that, Chair, particularly, and I think we know what, you know, each houses look different, don't they, really, in terms of how they're formed and fronted, etc.
I mean, a lot of houses are hidden behind hedges. My own is hidden behind vegetation. You wouldn't know it was there unless you knew it was there. We have to make that judgment, and we also need to remember that you know, if we did turn this down, it would go straight to appeal, and we need to consider the views of an inspector as well, a reasonable person. Okay, Councillor Godfrey, you have another question?
Yeah, returning to the village design statement. Page 10 of village design statement identifies all those hedge lines which are identified by the parish as being of value. This includes the hedge in front of the homestead. This does not get mentioned in the report. Should this be consideration in our decision?
Thank you, Chair. So there is a condition to retain the trees and hedges here, albeit there would be a loss by the accesses, and there is a condition to put in if it gets damaged or replaced or damaged or removed, it gets conditioned to be replaced within the 5-year period. So there is a condition in terms of soft and hard landscaping to control the operation, and it's believed on balance that the loss of the hedgerow, part of the hedgerow, isn't deemed materially harmful to outweigh the benefits of this scheme.
So much consideration being given in verbally, but it's not mentioned in the report. And yet we're cutting out 5 or more meters of hedge line, which is identified as valuable to the community. Why is the supplementary planning document being ignored?
Apologies for interrupting. I was wanting to say that page 140 does deal with this very matter in the report, so it has not been silent on the matter. The village design statement has also been mentioned in the report, so it has that the recommendation is therefore set out in respect of those elements. The weight that you can give to the village design statement is less than the whole development plan framework, and then you're looking at the landscape character, and that is in the report. It's set out, and your judgment is what you will now need to make in terms of the recommendation to you and the impact of the loss of that small element to allow the extra access, which is therefore facilitating new housing development in these infill areas, which our local plan encourages to try to provide local houses for local people or people in those local areas, in different sorts of villages with very different characters and very different setups. So it's never an exact science, and just take your thoughts back to what is the harm with those punches through to access the site through the hedge.
Is this a question on a different matter, Councillor Godfrey?
Yes.
Carry on.
If I'm not permitted to carry on with that questioning.
No, yes.
The parish council raised the issue of exceeded housing targets for the parish, including that windfall target for the area has been significantly exceeded. Why would we permit additional housing under the current plan and under the current when the plan about to be go through review, where we have already exceeded the development targets for this parish, when this is not currently needed.
Thank you, Chair. The policy itself, MTRA3, and the local plan is where you first take your assessment. The policy is positive to allow new housing. You don't need to then balance that or then assess, but have we already provided that new housing in numbers? That is what my local plans team do. And actually over delivering is a really good thing because it contributes to our 5-year land housing supply. We know how vulnerable that is at the moment with the changing framework. So it doesn't matter in respect of your decision making today. If there is an over delivery, it will matter as the new local plans move forward into what our housing land supply is. You have to consider the local plan first, and this policy, it doesn't matter that there's enough in this area already. That is actually a positive aspect.
So if we've done with questions on the report, members, we move to debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. This infill development, sort of in MTRA3 area, in principle, I do support. However, there are concerns that I do have that sort of veer into material planning considerations, but on balance, the merits of the development outweighs outright refusal. My first concern, again, and I know Shedfield is the parish, especially around Waltham Chase and the bottom Solomon's Lane as it comes onto Winchester Road, is an incredible area in regards to sewage, flooding, ongoing concerns. And although the runoff will not impact the sewage network with this development, with there being dedicated suds for each property, there still will be, a small impact from the foul sewage onto the network going towards Waltham Chase and past the new Morgan's Yard development that's been highlighted by the parish as well. But as Southern Water have not objected, we can really only frustratingly follow their advice. And as we've had legal advice sorts today and in the past, I think if we refuse this application on those grounds, it's likely to go through on appeal. So in regards to sewage, although I do think there needs to be something desperately done in Waltham Chase in regards to sewage and ongoing issues, unfortunately, that's something that I don't think we can consider today as part of a refusal for the planning application. The other large area of concern that I have with this development is the loss of the hedgerows and the lack of on-site biodiversity net gain, which is incredibly disappointing. The 2 new accesses that are being created does result in the loss of 2 parts of an incredibly mature continuous hedgerow. Those types of hedgerows do take quite a time to establish themselves and are wildlife corridors in themselves. So I do find that incredibly disappointing. However, with the biodiversity net gain, it does mean that the developer will pay more and more the further away the biodiversity net gain is provided. So I'll be supporting the application. I still have incredible concerns from the sewage. I think in principle it is infill. I know there has been debate around that. Just looking at the opposing side of the road as well, it is quite continuous and goes up into beyond the lane, which I've forgotten the name of, off to the western area of the site. Say the northern part of Somers Lane does continue in sort of a continuous run, and the southern area does reflect that, I believe. So I'll be supporting the planning application.
Thank you, Councillor White.
I'm really struggling actually to see it as infill and to see it as continuously developed road frontage, as Councillor Godfrey pointed out, from Quince Cottage onwards. If you go west along Solomon's Lane, it's hedging, it's vegetation, it's actually quite rural in appearance and character. And I think this is going to be quite a substantial change of the street scene. So that's one of my concerns. And then obviously there's the foul water drainage problem, which although legally is not a reason to refuse, is definitely something that needs to be sorted out, and work needs to be done to counteract the cumulative effect of the development in that area. So I'll wait to hear other people's opinions.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think there are two relevant points we need to consider. The hedge line along Solomon's Lane, the south side of Solomon's Lane, is identified as being of value to the community by the village design statement, a document which takes a long time to develop and which the local residents and parish council sets great store by. Because that's their perspective, the local people's perspective of what is important to them. And they've identified this specific hedge as being important. And this application is seeking to destroy a significant, or two significant stretches within that mature hedge line. With the damage which Councillor White has, and others have identified to the local flora and fauna. And I don't think that we should ignore what the VDS says. There is a continuous frontage of hedge line along from the entrance to the homestead all the way to Black Horse Road. And to break into it and say that is part of the continuous frontage of developed properties is not benefiting the local community. And I believe that we are applying a very strange interpretation of infill along a continuous developed frontage. And we should be refusing this application.
Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to tend to agree with Councillor Godfrey and Councillor White. This is an important hedge, and the developments, we haven't seen them further down the road, have managed to build maybe 4 or 5 houses with only one entrance. So I don't see why it can't be done here as well. So I will be objecting.
Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've already expressed my concern over the use of infill on this location and in this instance. But for me, the very helpful photographs taken by our officer with the coloured dots to depict exactly where the photographs were taken, I found particularly useful. So thank you very much for that. Looking on the site photographs of access, the photograph with the green spot is very apparent that there is no continuous developed frontage here for me. And I believe that the significant loss of hedgerow there would be significantly impactful on the street scene. So I'm unable to support the officer's recommendation on this.
Okay, I'll make my contribution. Councillor Laming afterwards, yeah. I understand what you're all saying, but I think we're reading too much into this hedge that continues along. And I have to be very practical about this in terms of this is likely to go straight to appeal, isn't it, if we did turn it down? So we would have to make sure that our reasons for not approving it would be really strong. And I really think that the argument about it not being a continuous frontage, despite the fact that there is clearly a hedge along there, that is not enough of an argument. It's designed to stop extra bits of development on the edge of villages so that you get creep development. It's not designed to stop this, which is clearly, you look at the map, you look at the block plan, which any reasonable person would do and say that is an infill. There is development all around it, despite the hedge. And I do regret very much the design in front of us, which means that there are two, a widened access and one new access into the hedge. Nevertheless, unfortunately, we can't redesign the access situation here and now. And I think turning it down on that basis would be extreme. Our officers have very carefully assessed this against not only our own local plan, our emerging local plan, the national planning policy framework and the village design statement. They've assessed it as being within those plans, and I'm content to accept the officer recommendation. Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. From several points of view, I'm not particularly happy with this application. The hedge is a fundamental problem that we need to address because it's in the village design statement and we have to put some weight on village design statements. The sewage is also a vast problem, but I thank our legal advice on that because that's quite an important issue, not only here but throughout the district. And this puts me into a complete quandary on this one, so I should be thinking about it before the vote.
Councillor Small.
Thank you, Chair. This is really difficult because I really wish there was a more substantial material planning reason to refuse, because being aware of the area, I know what this sewage issue means. And I know to some people it might seem like just two houses, but it's an ongoing problem. But as Mr. Lucas has talked us through, it's not something that we could consider, even though it just highlights that Southern Water is not fit for purpose. It's really frustrating, but I think I might have to support just because there isn't a strong enough material planning reason. And it's a shame it's got to this point.
So if there's no more contributions to debate, we turn to the decision. So this application has been recommended for approval by our officers. Can I see all those in favour of the officer recommendation?
5, 6.
And those against? So 6 for 3 against. So that is approved. Thank you very much. And that's the end of today's planning committee. Thank you.